Hey everybody, Kerzac here again in my backyard to bring you a new review of the Hasbro released Power Rangers Beast Morphers Beast Racer Converting Zord. That is really hard to remember and really hard to say for some reason. But yeah, for those who don't know, this is the American release of the Go Buster the Super Sentai Go Buster Ace figure that we never got over here because for whatever reason, when Bandai of America was in charge of Power Rangers, they skipped over from Super Mega Force over to Dino Charge, and in Japan, Go Buster came out in the middle of those two of their Japanese Sentai equivalents. So yeah, Hasbro, now that Power Rangers are finally giving us the Go Buster figures. And I haven't really heard anybody talk about these. I guess because they are very different, very strange compared to the Bandai of America previous figures. For one thing, I'm going to be talking about each of the Zords individually because they actually are sold individually instead of being released as one Megazord like Bandai of America would try to do with individual Zord figures for like the supplementary Zords, or in like say back with Wild Force's case, they would release whole Megazord. They would just wait for a whole Megazord set, a whole set of Zords to make a Megazord to be released. Hasbro is actually releasing these individually, much like the Japanese figures were. Or in my case, you bought the Amazon set, which has all 5 Zords all together, plus some extra stuff. So that's how I got this figure. I got the Amazon Ultra Zord set. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways to get this figure. They are going for, retail-wise, they are going for about 30 bucks each. Or you can get the Amazon one for like 160, I think was original price, and right now it's like 140. So they are 30 bucks each, so I'm going to be judging this as like a $30 figure. And since this is a $30 transforming figure from Hasbro, I do feel it's pretty safe to compare it to a Transformer of a similar price. That, for example, I have Earthrise Grapple here. You can see he is a much bigger figure. Much bigger. Not much taller, but it is a much wider figure for the same price, and a lot more paint, a lot more obvious paint on the outside. Now, I'm not sure Grapple is a fair comparison for that, but just to show you, yeah, there's a lot more paint, a lot more girth to this figure. Now, there's not as many parts to it. This is a much simpler figure, so that's probably why it's much bigger for the same price. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for complexity, go with Transformers, is all I'm going to say. But yeah, this is a pretty neat figure. I am going to be comparing it to the Japanese figure. I do not have the actual Go Buster Ace, but I have watched a video recently from Bulk Matrix from years back when that figure was new, and just kind of looked at back and forth between this one and that one to try to get a good idea. For people who are wondering why this is called Converting Zord, that's because Hasbro is also releasing figures that are just basically bricks that can move their arms and head. For little kids, of course, some of them have gimmicks, etc., etc. You know those kind of figures you see. You know Hasbro. So this is the Converting Zord, which is basically the actual Megazord. This is the one that can transform, but can combine with the other ones. You can make all kinds of cool robots, that kind of thing. So that's why this one's being called a Converting Zord. So onto the actual figure itself, you can see it's a pretty nice looking vehicle. You do get a lot of paint, as I mentioned before. It does roll pretty decently. The paint is all over the place. You know, we have silver on the rims, which is actually pretty nice, as usually Hasbro you do get a little bit of paint, but it is nice on such a big wheel. There is so much paint on it. On the Japanese release, I know there was some red in here too, but just having the silver is still pretty nice. There is silver all along the side here, and there is some red painted on top here, red right here on the stripes on the side, and this red windshield is all painted. There is some gold right here for the middle stripe, some black right here, and some silver going on back. And so this is actually red plastic all right here, so this is actually painted black on this back portion here, where the red plastic is. And that's about it. And the bottom looks pretty good too. You can barely tell that this is a robot hidden underneath there, and like the head exposed right there. As for this back here, this is actually a sword for the robot mode, and this is being used as a spoiler for the vehicle, which looks alright. I do think it sticks up a little too far to really be a spoiler, but it doesn't look too bad. And if you are buying this used, the spoiler is a separate piece, so be sure to watch out for that. As well as the piece in here, which we'll get into in a minute. As far as differences from the Japanese figure, there are quite a few. This figure is a lot longer and leaner. Not longer size-wise, but like as far as the general shape goes, the original Japanese figure was like not as long and a lot thicker. And that was due to the how it transformed. So I do think this one, for the most part, looks a lot better. It has a very Batmobile-esque look to it. The only thing I don't really think it looks like good is that where it hides the animal head for the other modes. it just kind of sticks out there. It's not really looking too good there. It just sits there. Granted, it's a separate piece you can remove, but then you're still left with a big gap right there and no piece to kind of flip down for it. So you win some, you lose some, I guess, if you want to say. But still, it looks pretty good. I do like how this all looks. On the Japanese figure, this is where the legs for the next mode, the Panther Leopard mode, would flip out. So here, the legs transform differently for that mode. So it actually looks pretty smooth right here. The feet in the Japanese figure actually look like the rear side mirrors, as they should. So I think at least for the vehicle mode, it does look a lot better. Also, on the Japanese figure, this hinge right here was a lot bigger and a lot more noticeable. So it's kind of up to you which one looks better, but I personally think the American release does look a lot better. So we're talking about that Panther mode. We should probably go ahead and get to that. Transformation, it's pretty easy. You just go ahead and remove this, and you can go ahead and... How this transforms is the blade right here actually slides through, which I think is pretty neat, and flips up, and there you have your sword. It is hollow on one side, which just kind of sucks, but you know, what can you do? Oh, I forgot to mention, there is a mode where this animal head combines. You actually just pull the front open, pop it out, and close it back up. Another major difference from the Japanese version is that on the original, this was a Buddy Roid, I believe it was called. On all the, at least for the three main Go Buster figures, they would all have Buddy Roids, where this little head was like it was kind of like a G1 Headmaster. The back here would flip down legs, and you would have a little character on the inside, and the head would kind of fold down like this to where you had a figure that had like a tripod leg thing going on. I'm fine that they don't have this in this figure. Yeah, sure, the Buddy Roids, you don't have little Buddy Roid figures, but I'd rather not have them and have this figure not cost $40 and only be $30 by comparison. I don't know how much they would charge the Buddy Roids, but I don't really miss them that much. They didn't really add anything to me. But they can still, these little head pieces can still combine with their vehicles, much like the Japanese figure. So you flip this up, this little bit right here flips up a little bit. You pop the head in like that and click it in. And there we go, there's the combined mode, which you're supposed to put the spoiler back on, but it's pretty much just the car mode with the head sticking out the front. Which does lead into the transformation towards the Leopard mode. For this is actually different. This is where it differentiates a lot from the Japanese figure, because for the Japanese figure, like these parts flip down still for the American version. You flip down the back to make the back legs, and these fold out, and then these flip out to make the feet. On the Japanese figures, the front would do the same thing, and you'd have these pieces flip out to make the legs. But here they actually do it a little bit differently, because these are panels that just flip out instead. And you're going to want to start with the panel that's on the right, because this panel's thinner, because these actually fold up on top of each other. And the one that has the smaller hinge has to go first. So you flip out this panel, you flip around, lay it flat against the underside, do the same thing with this side, like so. And now it'll give you the room you need to flip out the legs. And for the last part, you just take the sword, just plug it, stick out like that. You can do like that or like that. I think it looks better like that. And there you have the Panther mode, or Leopard mode, whatever it is. And yeah, this mode definitely looks a lot worse than the Japanese figure. It kind of trades off the car, having a better looking car, for having a much worse Panther mode. But to be fair, the Japanese version of this mode wasn't that great either. So I don't think it's a really bad trade-off. But they still did try. For the Panther head, it actually is pretty nicely painted. You can see actually some black for the ears, some gold going down for the face. I believe in the Japanese figure it had some black up here, but that's not here. Black on the nose, black underneath the eyes, and the eyes are done in a nice, really high, really bright green. And the mouth actually does still open. It actually has a little bit of gold for the jaw, so that's pretty nice. The legs, they do have the detailing, but they don't have any of the paint that the Japanese figure has. There is some paint right here though to make the sides red with some gold on it. There's some red paint here, and then these chunks still stick out just like a Japanese figure. On the Japanese figures, these stick out a lot more since the whole side's flipped down. And no paint really on the back legs, but you do have some detailing right there, which is pretty nice. And the tail still looks as stupid as it does on the Japanese figure. So yeah, this mode isn't that great, but it isn't god-awful either. It is worse than the Japanese mode. Like I said, it is worse than the Japanese Sentai figure, but that, like I said, that figure was already not, this mode on that figure was already not that great, so I don't think it's a major loss. Articulation wise, there isn't much. You can't go the legs forward, they can only go back due to transformation. These legs can go forward like that due to transformation, the feet can typically do that, but yeah, you're not doing any articulation and opening the mouth basically. Or I guess you can spin the tail around if you want. You can also use the joint too, I guess, to make the tail up and down. So there's that. There's some little bit of articulation, but yeah, not much. Alright, so now we're going to get to the transformation into his robot mode. So start that off, we're going to come to the front here and just remove the head. Go ahead and close that back up. Flip the legs back in. You're basically returning him back to his car mode. You're just, you know, flipping everything back in. Flip the feet back inward. Flip him up like that. Flip it back up. You really are just returning him to his car mode and then removing the sword. So for the actual transformation, you're going to split the vehicle right down the middle like so, flipping it out like that. You're going to flip the ends up like that to make his feet, bring the figure on up, and you can see he's going to get very tall very quickly. Bring the split the back of the vehicle like so to give him his arms. Flip these up to make the shoulders. Oh no, flip it around this way, my bad. Bring these down to make the arms, bring them forward, bring them down. Flip this little part to give up his little head crest. He actually balances just fine, just gotta get this leg spread a little bit. There we go. Also help my table's a little uneven. Alright. This part's the interesting part because this headpiece does plug into the chest, but it only plugs in by this clip at the top, so it doesn't really hold in that well. Like you see it clicks in there, but the slightest touch usually makes it pop off, which, oh, there went the headpiece. I'll go get that in a second. But, you know, we can give him his sword, go ahead and put that in, and give him a moment to get his headpiece. Alright, there we go, got the chest piece back on. Now for the Go Buster, this was known as his Ace mode. For Beast Morphers, I don't know if this really has a name outside of just robot mode. So for now, I am just going to call it robot mode. But in robot mode, he actually looks pretty good. He actually looks pretty accurate to his Japanese counterpart. The only new paint that's really been exposed is the paint on the shoulders, because this is actually black plastic that's been painted red. And the paint on the face is actually pretty nice if we can get the sunlight not reflecting it all away. But there is like some silver all around the face. The face itself is silver, some little black vents right here. The eyes are done in that same pale green that the cheetah's eyes were done. And that same pale green continues up here as a little circuitry detail, which I think looks pretty nice. You might notice this black gash going right through his head. That's because he has like a fighting mode, at least on the Go Busters version. I almost said Ghostbusters, that's the wrong franchise. But on the Go Buster version, you have like a fighting mode. It carries over that gimmick here. We can flip forward these little eyepieces. And it gives him a look, and that look is very similar to the Buddy Roid, from what I understand from the show. So it's pretty neat. Some paint details that are missing from Japanese version. It had silver right here on the arms. I know that for sure. I'm not too sure. I don't think anything else is really missing majorly, at least. One interesting detail is behind the panther head. There's actually some black paint for these vents, and these vents are only exposed in mid-transformation. You can't see this in vehicle mode. You can't see this part in any of the Megazord modes. It's only there in mid-transformation because once you have in robot mode, you click the head on and you can't see it anyway. So a bit of a strange detail with paint there. It is nice that it was painted, but I just find it odd that got painted and not, say, like the leg panels maybe or something. But some other new teeth. There is despite not being painted very much, there is a lot of new details exposed, like all this little circuitry detail all throughout the shoulders. On the legs, you have a lot of paneling detail, which I think looks pretty nice. The arms do have this nice detailing here, and even on the inside, it has the same detail. All their screw holes going through it. So it all looks pretty good, I think. It's a really nice looking robot mode. Differences from the Japanese Go Buster Ace version, there is actually quite a few here. On the Go Buster version, the legs stay like that, and this little panel pushed out actually acts as feet for that version, and you can still do that here, kinda, but he doesn't have the proper support to do that. And I think this looks a lot better anyway. I don't like that this is hollow. I wish these collapse down or something to kind of fill in that space. But I do like that these are much bigger, much nicer looking feet, and it's a lot sturdier, even if it's not accurate to how it looks in the show. Another difference, one thing that does suck is that his fingers don't open up. The Japanese version, the hand would actually open up, but here it doesn't. But on the flip side, he holds the sword better than his Japanese counterpart, because the Japanese one had like a ball piece that had to be pressed in, and I would not have wanted to do that. That looked really finicky and looked like it could break the sword. Personally, I haven't heard anything about it being broken, but it did not look fun to mess with. This I feel like is a lot more toy friendly. Now, one thing that's really great about this figure compared to the previous Bandai America releases is that it actually has a lot of really good articulation. I believe it actually has more articulation than the Japanese figure even to this extent, besides the fingers not opening up. And if you know anything about Power Rangers toys, they're usually bricks. They usually are shoulders, maybe head movement if you're lucky, maybe some elbow articulation. Here he actually has quite a bit. The head can fully rotate. It is a little bit loose on mine copy, but you know, you can get the full head rotation right there. The arms can go to full 360, and you can also go outward. You do get a swivel here, and you do get an elbow joint, which is really good considering he's a sword wielder. I do wish they had wrist rotation of some kind, but I can accept that there isn't there. Waist articulation, and thing is with the shoulder, all the shoulder movement, you can say it's part of transformation. Almost all the movement in the shoulders and arms were part of transformation, but everything from the legs down is not part of any kind of transformation outside the legs moving outward. So this is all articulation that was added, I think specifically by Hasbro, because I don't remember seeing the Ace figure be able to move this much. So you do have a waist swivel right there, which is really nice. You can get the full 360 with that. The hips actually move forward. Now it is a really tall leg, so it does look a little awkward because the legs make up about 3/4 to 2/3 of his body length, but you actually have forward and back movement with the leg. Now it can only go that far forward, and oh, there went the head again. And can only go that far back, but you do have leg articulation. It doesn't move outward at the hip, but the transformation joint does allow it to move outward at the knee, which does look a little bit awkward, but hey, you got outward leg movement too if you want to count it there. You do get a swivel right there, and you actually get a knee joint right there at the top right there. And that is actually pretty nice articulation. Nothing at the feet really. I mean, you do get forward and back and like transformation joint, which I guess you could because that is added articulation due to how he transforms. Oh, and I slid the piece right off his... That will happen occasionally if you mess around with articulation too much, but that only happens very occasionally for me. But you can actually get the leg kind of going like that if you want. If you get a stable pose like that, you can actually use the leg articulation. And yeah, like I said, none of that is used for transformation. The only part of the articulation that's used for transformation is coming down like this. The swivel, the hip joints, the knee joint, even the head swivel, all of that is for just the benefit of making this figure posable. Let me grab the little head chest piece real quick and get that back on there. So Hasbro, I really feel like knocked this out of the park with this figure. He is a much needed improvement over what Bandai America gave us, and even what Bandai Japan gave us to a certain extent. This is, I wouldn't say this is outright better than Go Busters because I haven't had that figure. I don't have that figure myself. I'm not going to say he's outright better than Go Buster Ace without having him in hand myself, but I do think he's a worthy competitor to Go Buster Ace compared to what Bandai Japan normally gave us. Like there's a distinct reason to have this figure over the Japanese figure. He's not just a worse, cheaper version like a lot of what Bandai America gave us. And that's not me trying to hand on to get Bandai America either, but a lot of times we did just kind of get cheaper, worse versions of what the Japanese figures could do, often with their gimmicks removed. But here, he's actually pretty nice. You know, you have articulation. I think the overall figure looks a lot slimmer and better, in my opinion. In the original Japanese version was very chunky, much like how the vehicle mode looked. Well, here, it's kind of like how Power Rangers Samurai did compared to Shinkendo, where the figures all have much slimmer, much better proportions in robot mode. And I think that carries over here, too. There are some sacrifices for that, because while the race, of course, like the car mode and the robot mode look a lot better, the Panther mode suffers, but that mode's always been kind of bad to begin with in the first place, so I'm okay with that. And yeah, he doesn't really have any gimmicks in this mode to do. I mean, his gimmick is combining with the others once we get the other figures in here. And this guy does retail for about 30 bucks. You can actually find, last time I checked, you can find him on eBay for 30 bucks straight from Hasbro if you go to the Hasbro toy shop on eBay. You can actually get him for 30 bucks right now, which is nice because for a while there he was actually 70 bucks, which he is definitely not worth 70 bucks. Don't pay 70 bucks. Do not pay that much. Don't pay more than 40, I would say. But 30 bucks I think is actually a pretty decent price for this figure. Let me get a Transformer for comparison real quick. And just give you a good comparison shot from an air figure from Hasbro. It's also $30. Here he is next to Grapple once again, who is a Voyager class. And just to give you an idea, yeah, he's quite a bit taller. He's even taller than like the leader classes from Hasbro, even with their upgrades and everything. He's a very big figure for 30 bucks compared to the Transformer here. Now, obviously, he's not as complex. There's not as many pieces. He doesn't have as much articulation, so that's all for granted there. But he is bigger, and he is more better painted in my opinion than the Transformers at a similar price. So that's your kind of trade-off. You know, if you're getting this for a kid, this is probably a better figure for a kid. You can find some of these on clearance too. I haven't seen this figure on clearance, but I did see at my Target that the gorilla, the rabbit, and the jet Zords were all, or the truck. I think they're technically the truck Zord, the helicopter Zord, and the jet Zord were all only 20 bucks instead of 30 bucks at my local Target. Which, if you can find it for 20 bucks, definitely get this figure. And also get any of their figures you can find for 20 bucks. That's actually a pretty nice deal, I would say, for those figures. The others are definitely not worth the price as much, as only him and one other Zord, the Wrecker Zord, have a robot mode. The other 3 Zords all only have animal and vehicle modes, because they're more auxiliary Zords to combine with these guys to make better combine with these figures. But still, he himself's a pretty nice figure. The others are pretty nice. I'll get to them later on this week for reviews. And I think they're all pretty worth the price. They're all very nice. And like I said, if you can find him for get him while he's 30 bucks. If you see him for 20 on sale, definitely get him. He's definitely worth the 20 bucks. And he's worth the 30 bucks as well. He's a pretty nice little figure, and I really do like the improvements they made over the Japanese version. And just the improvements in just how well Hasbro's handled this. This was Hasbro's first attempt at the Power Rangers franchise. And at least as far as the Zords go, I think they're handling it very well. I don't know much about the actual individual figures that's outside the Lightning Collection figures, which are also pretty nice. But this actual Zord figure is very good. This is an A+ to you, Hasbro. You made some improvements, you made some minor, not good things, mainly the Panther mode, but for the overall, I think this is a really good conversion from the Japanese Sentai figure. So, this has been Kerzac. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you all have a good day. Take care.